Welcome to the Jones Zone, a podcast by Darryl and JJ Jones.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Jones Zone. Today, we've got Don Schuler. She's an agent in beautiful Lake Arrowhead, California. I thought this would be good because, I've got clients who've purchased homes in Arrowhead because it's so close by Orange County and it's beautiful. And Dawn, appreciate you being on the show. How long have you been in Arrowhead so far?
My husband and I have been here for 2.5 years.
Awesome. And now Dawn's also a real estate agent too. I know sometimes I have real estate agents do the show, and then sometimes it will just be clients of mine. Even though Dawn actually was a client, I sold their house. Must have been 3 years now.
It was 3 years. Yes.
Okay.
It took us a little bit to find this place, but we sold our house and had to find a new house.
And you're happy. It's cool up there, huh?
Yes. Love it here.
Awesome.
Yes, I am with Keller Williams, Lake Arrowhead. I'm going on my second year with them. I'm a Midwest girl. I'm from Michigan, and my husband had a job transfer 15 years ago. So we settled in Yorba Linda in Orange County. We raised our kids there for 15 years. And then as our last one was in college, and that was when the market started really going crazy. So we were looking at all the places everybody else was looking at. We were looking at Las Vegas area, Lake Tahoe, Utah, Idaho. When we sold our house, we sold it very quickly. We sold it within a month. We had to be out of our house in a month and a half. So we just didn't know where to go, and we didn't have any kids. And my husband actually through COVID just lost his job. So he was just doing consulting work. So we said, why don't we buy a fifth wheel and take off? And we traveled across the US for 4 months. Now, while we were on that journey, we said, you know what, we miss our kids. They're all back here in Orange County and in San Diego. And we can't be that far from them. We want them to come see us. So we said, well, we have our Midwestern Michigan roots, it's the Great Lakes. Where can we go where we can get some fresh water? We can just kind of be out of the hustle and bustle of Orange County. And we stumbled across Lake Arrowhead. The two options we had were Big Bear or Lake Arrowhead. Big Bear, our kids had gone to a lot of camps there growing up, and we knew a little bit about that, but we didn't know anything about Lake Arrowhead. So first thing, we got on Zillow and we looked at different places here, and we started getting more serious. So we got a realtor because we were still back in Michigan when we were looking. Long story short, we ended up buying a house here, took one trip out here to look at houses, and we found ours, and we just fell in love with it up here. I mean, don't tell anyone beyond your podcast. But it is very heavenly up here. It's just something else. And it has its quirks. It has some interesting parts to it, but I wouldn't change a thing. My husband barely can get me to go down the mountain, for this and that, which is nice that we can. So for your listeners, when they're looking for a second home up here, I know what they're looking for. Because I was looking for it. Some things that maybe people up here, that have lived up here all their life, they don't see it. You don't see what's in front of you.
Well, it's like asking fish, how's the water?
Yeah.
They don't even realize it. So yeah, people that live there forever.
2.5 years in, I'm just still in wonder. The sunsets here are incredible. I'm an early morning person. It's just, you are in nature, and it's just cool. So I'm happy to dive into some of this stuff with you.
What are the popular neighborhoods or communities in Lake Arrowhead that buyers often consider for a second home? Are there a lot of different communities? Go ahead and take over from there.
There are Lake Arrowhead. Around the lake, there are things called lake rights. And I would say the majority of people who are looking to move up here or to get a second home, I would say the biggest thing is they want lake rights, because Lake Arrowhead is a private lake. And what that means is that only if you own property within this lake right boundary do you have access to the lake trails, to some of the private parks. That's probably what people are looking for most. Now, the towns that are around the lake, of course, you have Lake Arrowhead Village, which a lot of people know of. There's also Cedar Glen. There is Blue Jay. Most of those towns have lake right homes. There are some sections. So it's really important I think it's really important for someone to work with someone that's up here, because that's just one of these nuances that we're going to get into that you need to know about. You have to know about them to know what areas you need to be in. So, like we live over by the Lake Arrowhead Country Club. That's another area. But I would say lake rights is the biggest thing that someone wants when they're looking for a second home. If you're just into ATVing or jeeping or mountain biking or camping, of course you can go further out, Twin Peaks, Crestline, Running Springs, Green Valley Lake. Those areas do not have lake rights. So it's a little bit what you're looking for, but I would say the majority of the people look for lake rights.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then what about skiing? I mean, people think of mountains. How close is it to Big Bear? What's it take you to drive to Big Bear?
It's an hour. So it's not as close as people think. So it's actually easier to go down the mountain to like the Redlands area and stuff rather than go to Big Bear. I mean, a lot of people, if you're in Lake Arrowhead, you don't tend to go over to Big Bear and vice versa. You instead maybe go down the mountain.
How close is snow skiing to where you're?
Snow Valley is our closest. And if there's no traffic, that'll take you 20 to 30 minutes, because a lot of people come up the 330, which goes through Running Springs to go to Snow Valley. Then you have traffic. And Orange County, LA County, we know traffic,
Yeah.
It's long.
No. It's funny because I'm doing different states and everything, and the Californians have moved to different states, and when they say some of the people from that state complain about traffic, and they roll their eyes and go, "You don't know what traffic is. This is not traffic.
Right.
Traffic's in Orange County." Any trends going on right now that affect local buyers or potential buyers? Is it more of a seller's market there, a buyer's market, or a neutral?
For the last year, believe it or not, it's been a buyer's market. And let me tell you why. You probably heard, it was all over the national news. Last March, we had what we call Snowmageddon here. And we got 100-year type of storm, which means that it's probably the biggest storm we'll see in our lifetime. In Lake Arrowhead, they said we got about 9 feet of snow. So when we were here, when it happened, and we were literally snowed in. We had a lot of sliding glass doors in our house, and the snow was all the way to the top of the sliding glass doors.
Wow.
So, like, my husband had to go up and clear off the vents for the furnace so it wouldn't go out. And he literally walked up onto the roof because there was that much snow. So in saying that, a lot of people that moved up here in the COVID time, because, they wanted to get away from stuff, they could work remotely. A lot of people from LA and Orange County and San Diego, they, took advantage of that, and they moved up here because at that time, 2019, even if they went up a little bit earlier, the housing prices were really reasonable up here, really reasonable. So Snowmageddon happened, and I'm telling you, this last summer, there was a lot of people that we called it the U-Haul summer. A lot of people heading out.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there were a lot of houses for sale. Not only they were tired of the snow, maybe a bigger house, but there were a lot of short-term rentals, STRs, that maybe people had some trouble during Snowmageddon and they just didn't realize what they needed to do and have resources ready for, to take care of some clients that were in their properties. So I think they just chose differently, which people can. So even through October this year, it's slowed down more. There's not as many houses for sale, but most of the year, buyer's market.
That's good for buyers, obviously. Yeah. So are there any special features or amenities that buyers typically seek when purchasing a second home in Lake Arrowhead?
Well, I would say, I think most people that come up here, they want to find a second home. I think they're looking for the mountain lodge or the cabin vibe up here. So as you can see behind, they're looking for the wood vaulted ceilings or the A-frame look. They're looking for maybe a great room configuration in the house, living room, dining, kitchen all together, maybe with a loft that overlooks that area. So, and then they're looking for bedrooms because if it's a vacation home, they want their family to come up, they want people to stay, or with a rental, again, bedrooms because, they can ask a bigger price, rental price, because it has more room for people to stay. So, they want that mountain feel.
And you definitely get it there. I've been to Lake Arrowhead, but it's been, oh my goodness, probably since I was a kid. I may have caught my very first fish as a kid in Arrowhead. I'll have to check with my folks. But now they don't ski. There's no skiing there. It's just for boating and for what, jet skis and fishing?
No jet skis. It's just boating. Now, again, because it's a private lake, you have to have lake rights. And then if you want a boat, we have a boat, which, like that, I said that Michigan, growing up in Michigan, it's so awesome. There's nothing like being on the lake. I'm telling you what. So you have to have a boater's license, a California boater's license. Then you also have to pass a test through the Association of Lake Arrowhead, the ALA. You have to do another test because there's a lot of rules on the lake because it gets very crowded. And so everyone has to drive their boat in a correct direction. And there's a lot of other things that, are good for safety and also just preserving the lake.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Those that have not lived in the mountain areas, what type of snow, as spoiled Californians, under 50 degrees, we're freezing. So what maintenance do you need to do to the homes in Lake Arrowhead that you normally wouldn't have to do, obviously, in Orange County?
There's a disclosure when you buy a house in Lake Arrowhead. There is a newer disclosure. I don't know what the date was that they made this, but it is awesome. This disclosure is the San Bernardino Mountain Advisory. There are 45 points that they make that everyone who lives in Lake Arrowhead and has a house, they need to know this stuff. You were just talking about maintenance. The things that they ask buyers to do, especially if they're gone for a long period of time, is the buyer's advised during winter conditions that the plumbing pipes inside and out should be drained and receptacles winterized against any possible freezing. That's a big one. And then also they just talk about, the housing stock here up in Lake Arrowhead is actually quite old. Like the house that we bought was built in 1963. So, like insulation there's not a lot of insulation.
Kind of important.
Yeah. So they want you to be just mindful that, things are going to freeze. It's going to be hot because the houses aren't insulated as much as other homes. And that, you want to make sure you can keep varmints out so you have things properly sealed and things like that. So
speaking of varmints, do you see bears up there at all?
Well, my husband has like the ultimate bear story. And just to make it real brief, he was outside like at 10 p.m. He was looking at something on his phone while our garage is detached. He was walking back to the house and he heard this weird noise. He thought it was like our dog was out or something. He looks up and there was like the biggest bear he has ever seen in his life. It was like the size of a small car. And, he, of course, let out a shriek and kind of tried to get big, and the bear just kind of like looked up and he just kind of, I think they both scared themselves and he just kind of turned around and walked back up our driveway. So, I'm not saying that they are wild, but I think he was just looking for our trash, and let's see, just last week, I saw a bobcat right out on our back patio, a big bobcat.
I think that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I actually have a lot of experience with bears. When I was younger, we used to go to Yosemite every single year for 10 years straight. We saw just dozens and dozens of bears. And, obviously if you know how to act and you make a lot of noise so you don't scare them, etc. But yeah, and I think like a bobcat, that would just be so awesome to see out, in my opinion.
Yeah, he saw me inside the window, looked up for a second, then he just kept going. He wasn't nervous about me at all. So you had to have a respect, and stand far enough away not to get in their space. Probably The most pesky of the animals up here are the raccoons.
I was going to say raccoons. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've seen quite a few things. Here, there's a mountain lion actually not too far from us. You usually hear we have a, Facebook page that a lot of the community's on. So someone will tell you where they see something, on this street and this street. And it's very community here.
Has there been any reported bear attacks or any animal attacks within the last 5 years that you're aware of?
Not aware of any. I really think it's just, they're trying to stay out of your way. There are a lot of coyotes. We live by the golf course and they can be so noisy sometimes at night, but they kind of just, coyotes in Orange County. It's kind of the same thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They announce when they're eating. So they're quite jubilant.
Two other things, which I think is incredible, is we have quite a few eagles up here. So there are 2 eagles that have a nest over Lake Gregory and Crestline. And so if you go kayaking there or something, they're just flying over that. It's just amazing. And then we have an eagle over on Lake Arrowhead that, is always hunting. And then we also I live by Grass Valley Lake, which is over by the golf course. It's just a small little lake. And we have a crane or a heron that is there. It's home there. And I just love it.
No, it sounds fascinating. So you had mentioned earlier, I meant to ask this, your house was built in 1963. What's the newest development in Lake Arrowhead?
I would say up in the hill in just above Crestline. There's a couple of communities up there. So larger homes, gated. So they have a view of the lake, but everything down below here, there might be a couple of spot new houses. But no new houses down by the lake. Everything's been built. There are 10,000 lots that have been built on in Lake Arrowhead. 53% of the homes are owner occupied and 47% second homes or rental homes. So 10,000 lots.
Wow.
And the population up here is about 13,000 that live up here. But on a holiday weekend, the population can swell to 40,000 people.
That's a lot of people. You talked about it already. Activities that you can do in Lake Arrowhead. There's, of course, boating, fishing, hiking.
Yes, I wrote those down just so I would remember. There's hiking, biking, ATVing, jeeping, boating, snow skiing, kayaking, canoeing. Yeah, any kind of outdoor activity, you can find it here.
What is the distance? What's it take around 90 minutes to get from Yorba Linda to Lake Arrowhead?
To get to like more middle Yorba Linda, it takes an hour 10.
Oh, okay. That's not too far at all.
Depending on traffic, of course.
Is there anything different regarding property taxes in Lake Arrowhead? Is it just your standard, like in Orange County, it's around 1.1%, a couple of small add-ons?
Yes. I looked that up and Arrowhead is 1.3% is the average property tax rate. San Bernardino County, the average is 1.42. So the average homeowner in Lake Arrowhead is paying about $5,553 for taxes. And did you know that we are not a city up here? We are run by the county, by San Bernardino County. So the county supervisor, I guess, is as close to our leader of our town. So, that's good and bad. We have a little less government up here, but we also have a little less government. So maybe some of the resources come a little slower. It's just, I like it more than not like it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Less other people controlling you. And then any regulations or restrictions that buyers should be aware of in owning a second home in Lake Arrowhead?
Yes. So the 2 biggest things is I mentioned before, the Association of Lake Arrowhead. Most people call it ALA. And they make all the rules for those people with lake rights, which is the Arrowhead Woods area. They have lake rights. And so let me tell you the other one. The other one is the Association of the Architectural Committee, Arrowhead Woods Architectural Committee, AWAC. They're kind of like your HOA, which means like if you want to change the color of your house, you need to get a permit through them. If you want to, there's only certain types of fencing you can use, things like that. So a lot of people that move up here, and us included, when we moved up here, we did renovations to our house and we had to be told about AWAC. You don't want to, because you can get fined. Oh, and also big thing with AWAC is cutting down trees. If you have a tree too close to your house or one that's blocking your view, you have to get approval through AWAC before you can do that, because trees are very precious to us up here. So they have to be approved before taken down or you get fined big time. And back to the ALA, if you have a second home that you're going to use as a short-term rental or even a long-term rental, they have a lawsuit going on right now, which may change some of these rules. But right now, if you have a short-term rental, you, the property owner, have to give permission. Okay, so the rentals up here for short-term rental, you can't stay longer than 30 days. If you rent a place, you have to get a approval from the buyer or some kind of like short-term rental lease that you can take into ALA. The ALA office is located by our marina. So if you want to use the lake as a short-term renter, you have to get a day pass to use the lake trails, the park, hang out on the dock if it comes with the dock, or there's 2 beaches that are part of our association, and you have to pay a fee for each day that you're there. You cannot drive a boat, because that's only a privilege of lake owners, lake right owners, because they have to also be, that license with California and license with ALA. So they are not allowed to go on the lake unless they went on the lake with the owner of the house. So there's a lot of very intricate rules, but someone who is at an STR, they can use some of the amenities that come with the lake rights, but they have to get that approval and then go get the permit at the ALA office.
The rentals have to be no more than 30 days or no less?
No, 30 days for a short-term rental.
Oh,
yes.
And as little as one night to 30 days?
Oh, yes. Right.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
And then the lake rights, is that an additional charge? Anybody that buys in a particular section automatically get those rights?
If you are in the Arrowhead area that you buy a house, then you get lake rights. Now, there are 3 different memberships, ALA memberships. It's kind of also like a HOA fee. So like if you get the basic membership, you're allowed to go on the lake and go on the lake trails. You get a little badge, every year. Then the next membership is the beach membership. So you get to use those 2 beaches that are right on Lake Arrowhead. And they have like little snack bars and little beach areas to lay your blanket out or whatever. So not only do you have the lake rights, then you have to pay. It's not that much. I think the basic membership is maybe $180 a year, and maybe don't quote me on this, but the beach membership is maybe like, I don't know, $250 or something a year. So it's not that much. It's just so people have their little ID and ALA people can keep track of who's where and, what's going on.
What's the population of Lake Arrowhead?
People that live here, it's about 13,000. I think this is information I got from the Lake Arrowhead Chamber of Commerce. It said 13,000. I think it could be a little bit more. I don't know. There seems to be more people living full time up here than there used to be a couple of years ago. So I'm not sure.
I was going to ask you about that, how the percentage of owner occupied and rentals.
Right.
Is
the owner occupied, according to the Chamber of Commerce, is about 53% of the people up here are owner occupied. And then, the rest either second homes or rentals.
A lot of Airbnbs, I would imagine. Or
a lot of Airbnbs. There are some because, again, of Snowmageddon and then also the higher interest rates. You see some of those short-term rentals turning to long-term rentals, which are really in demand up here. There just is not a lot of long-term rentals up here.
I'm assuming there's management companies up there that really help out.
Yes, there's several management companies, and I think a lot of people use those, which I think is a smart idea. One of the problems that we ran into during Snowmageddon is people were caught off guard. They came up here, they were snowed in. People didn't have diapers and formula that, just came up for the weekend. They didn't have any snow plow. They couldn't get out. They didn't have a shovel, in some places. We were really caught off guard a lot with that. And so I think people who were trying to do it themselves, maybe they got a property management company to help them a little bit more.
How close is the city, the closest city? What are your nearest? Reading?
Redlands, I'd say if you're going to do shopping, Redlands, Costco, that's about 30 to 40 minutes.
Reading's is beautiful. That's where I saw you last, right? With that event in Reading? With Tommy
yes.
And, yeah. That was a beautiful. I never had been to Reading. Reading is really a charming town.
Redlands, yes.
Oh,
yes.
Redlands.
Yeah.
See. I've never been there.
Oh, I have to tell you, some of these nuances up here, like one of the things that people don't know about is we don't have any U.S. mail delivery up here. So nobody has mailboxes. And, if you think about it, there's so many second homes up here, that would be difficult, in the snow. So you go to Lake Arrowhead, has a huge post office. You don't have to pay for your post office box if you get the one that they provide to you. Another thing of the community, it's kind of an outing. You go to the post office, you go to Stater Brothers up here in the village, and you see people at the post office, and I know my postal person Craig, and it's very hometown, small town. I love it.
That's I don't blame you. It sounds very nice. It's pretty mellow. You obviously love it, so there's not obnoxious partiers there.
No, and if people are, there's different steps in place.
You're allowed to shoot them. Aren't you allowed to shoot them up there if they get too obnoxious?
No.
Okay.
You have to get your short-term any rental, you got to get it approved or gone through with San Bernardino County. You have rules that you have to follow. I think they've had, ADUs up here for a lot of years. And it's not what is happening now in Orange County and LA County. It's more like you have a 3-story house. The bottom floor is either a short-term rental or a long-term rental. And then the top 2 floors, your second homeowner comes and stays in. So a lot of houses have what we call, it's not called an ADU up here. It's just called an apartment in your house. Right. But we've had them for years up here.
How about medical? How are you doing with doctors? You slip and fall. What do you got to do?
Well, I have had experiences with that firsthand since I've been up here. We have Mountain Community Hospital over by the marina on the other side of the lake. What they provide is an emergency room, 24-hour emergency room. And then there's radiology, there's a lab, pharmacy. So earlier this year, I had emergency gallbladder surgery. And I didn't know I was having a problem until I had a problem. So we went to the emergency room there. They stabilized me. They called down the hill. And most people, if you have something beyond your emergency room visit, they'll go to Loma Linda, which isn't too far, or they'll go to St. Bernardine's, which is just down the hill in San Bernardino. They just stabilized me, and then I had to take a ambulance ride in the middle of the night down, and then a specialist handled it for me. So I also had a friend who dislocated her shoulder, fell on some ice, and then we were in the emergency room together, and they did a great job. So it's emergency room only up here. And then you're going to be transported either by ambulance, or we have a heliport, helicopter down if it's really serious. If you're having, you need a specialist or dialysis or something like that, you're going to have to go down the mountain. But we have dentists, ophthalmologists. We have basics up here. I know I had a friend who needed some cancer treatments. They would be going down to Loma Linda area to have those.
How about employment? Most of the people there are retirees. Is that fair to say?
No, no.
Oh.
There is only about 20% of the people up here are retirees that are full time. Now, you do have a lot of retirees that have a second home up here. They have their house down in Pasadena or Yorba Linda, and then they come up here on the weekend, maybe members of the Lake Arrowhead Country Club and, do golfing up here or just come up in the summer. So just about 20%. The main employers up here, the RIM school system, we have one high school, one middle school, and 3 elementary schools to handle all of our area up here. So that's a big employer. We have all of our electric wires are above ground. Nothing's buried. So actually, Southern California Edison is a big employer up here, huge, and their subsidiaries or other people that work for them. Of course, it's a vacation place. So the resorts, the small businesses, that's an employer. Also the gas company. So a lot of people, if they're still working, like my husband, he works remotely. His company is based out of New York. And he's just on a different time zone than some of the other employees. And, he has a 10-second commute from the coffee maker into the office. So there are a lot of people up here that do that. If you have a job, you can do the commute, 30 to 60 minutes. We have a friend who works for City of Riverside in the accounting area. So there's all kinds.
Oh, that's a pretty robust. Do you need a generator also there?
I would recommend it. That was one of our first purchases after our house, the Thanksgiving before we moved up here. When I first moved up here, I did a lot of substitute teaching or long-term teaching at the middle school. And they had to write about, some memory that they had, recent memory. And I would say about 3/4 of the kids wrote about the Thanksgiving that they put the turkey in and then all the power went out for 2 days and they never got Thanksgiving. When the power goes out, it can go out for a couple days. So very, very smart to have a generator.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I figured as much.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about houses. So what's your low-end house? If someone just wanted to get the bare minimum, do they have condos there?
They do have condos, yes. There are, I'd say 3 condo little communities. One's on the lake. One is on the road right across from the lake. So you probably can peer and look a little bit and see the lake. Like a 3-bedroom condo. Now, most of those were built in the 80s, so may need some renovation. But I think you can get into one about $450. And then, of course, you'd have your HOA, whatever amenities that they have with that. I would say the average house now, when I talked about lake rights, like if you're looking on Zillow and you're like, oh my gosh, this house is such a good value, this is a lot cheaper than that house and they look about the same, it's probably because of lake rights. A house that has lake rights is going to be a little bit more money. I believe the average home right now here is around $725 to $750. That's with lake rights. Now you can go over to Twin Peaks that doesn't have lake rights, but really cool community, more woodsy, a little higher elevation. You can be in the 500s, maybe in the 600s and get a nice second home for sure.
And go all the way up, right? Are there some Warren Buffett have a place there?
Does he?
No, I'm just kidding. I just meant, what is the most extravagant property there?
Depends on what you want. I was talking about that neighborhood that's above Cedar Glen, the gated community. I did not see this house, but there was a record house up there. I think it just sold recently, and I think it was about $23 million. So I'm not sure what that looked like, but it must have been nice.
23 million.
Yes. Sure, it had a killer view, and then I'm sure, you had a little more space up there, probably had garages and.
I hope you had a whole mountain with that for 23 million. That is I just closed on a beach property, just land for $4 million. And I thought that was insane in Laguna Beach, but 23 million. Wow.
There's a house that's on the lake, believe it's still 14 million, It has a little bit of property on the lake, like private right on the lake.
So if you want to be on the lake, you got to open up that wallet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, I'm sure, in Orange County, that, a lot of people are waiting to buy a house, and interest rates may go down, but I think then what's going to happen, and it's going to happen up here, is then you're going to get into a bidding war. More people want it, and then it's going to make the house price go up. This is a really good time to buy up here.
Well, let's tell our listeners, both of them, my mom and dad, how can someone get a hold of you in case they do want to delve in deeper into the Lake Arrowhead area? What's the best way to reach you?
You can look at my website, Keller Williams Homes for Sale on there, and that's Don Schulert, DAWNSCHULERT at KW.com. And then you certainly can text me or call me. My phone number is 714-598-9542. And I'd be happy to help. I actually have about 3 potential buyers right now I'm working with. And what I would suggest, if someone is newer to the area, I would love to help you understand the area, because there's, more trees on this side of the lake, more deserty look on the other side of the lake. Do you want to be by the village? Do you want to be by the golf course? What do you like?
All right, I've got to run. You probably got to go skiing or hiking or go tackle a bear or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And tell Mark hi also. And I really, really appreciate you joining me. And anybody, please call Dawn if you're interested at all in buying a property in Lake Arrowhead, or if you own a house and you want to get it sold and you're listening to this podcast, call Dawn to sell your property.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
No, it's always best.
Yes. And come up. We want to have you up. It's just a heavenly place. You got to come.
I'll definitely make a point of that. Thank you again, and over and out for another episode of the Jones Zones. Thanks everybody for joining us.